Thank you, Celebration. Can you feel the imagine me? Can you feel the all gone, the depression, the feeling unworthy, and the feeling of love so profound and so deep? Can you feel it? Do you let it go deep? How many of you out there have wanted to see behind the veil of what happens after this life? Anybody out there besides me? Quite a few of us. I'd say almost all of us. We all want to know what follows this life, and I've read books on NDEs and been interested in seeing what comes next. And we are just beginning this series of the book, based on the book Dying to Be Me by Anita Moorjani. And it's a great, amazing victory, really, of her experience of having lymphoma cancer, stage 4, dying, going into a coma, and stepping across that veil and looking behind that, seeing that, and finding something so amazing that it absolutely transformed her life. It released all fear from her being, and she came back to this life, healed from the lymphoma cancer, and was expressing that which she found there, which is so worthy of our study. She says you don't have to have a near-death experience to heal. Isn't that good news? And we thought worth studying and bringing here. We want to share with you today the feeling of knowing the beauty of our own being, what covers it up, and how can we discover it again. And we wanted to kind of feel the beauty of your own being. And if you look at that little being up there, we thought about having a baby up here, but thought maybe that would be a little too unpredictable. So we thought we'd show the picture, and we thought we'd have a different way of showing the beauty of our being. Here is a little beautiful being in this stained glass. And we wanted to use this as an object lesson for us today to symbolize the beauty that is within your being. And do you remember either yourself when you were a little boy or perhaps when you were a little girl, the beauty of the essence of your spirit that just shone so freely? And if you don't remember yourself, maybe a grandchild or a son or a daughter, you know, when they first come in, how amazing they smile like you smile, and the purity of their hearts. And I can see your smiles. I can see you tapping into that beauty of those beautiful little souls. And this is within each and every one of us. Mm-hmm. But then what happens?
Well, somewhere along the way, you know, we hear something negative. Something's not right. Something's a little wrong with me. You know, it's so easy for us to go into guilt and shame. Anita Moorjani's reason for telling her story and writing the book was so that other people wouldn't have to suffer from these triggers that have been with us our whole lives. And so we want to uncover these. But what happens, you know, growing up is that something will be said, and we'll get into something that was said to her. But it goes deep and it wounds us. And to protect ourselves, our ego kind of puts a barrier out there. To prevent us from having that issue again will be harsh inside of us. As Joni was sharing, in 10 minutes, what goes on inside here is more devastating than 10 years in other people's talk. So what we do is this inner parent chastises us to prevent us from being torn up by our peer group or our parents or something else, so we're more harsh on ourselves. And when that happens, we bury our essence. And we lose that beauty, that effervescent innocence of that Christ presence.
Things happen and they create doubt within us. We hear something, we witness something, they create some sort of doubt. And that doubt within us over time can become fear. And that fear is the root of disease, of unease, literally unease. So we wanted to look at what happened with Anita and what happens with us to disturb that essence, to cloud our essence from its expression. And in her life, she wondered at first if she was the wrong sex. Some woman said, "Were you disappointed when your second child was a girl?"
Right in front of her.
And
to her mom.
She was suddenly concerned that who she wasn't good enough, wasn't enough, that she was somehow a burden to her family because she was a girl.
Yeah. Someone shared right before we came out here that there's now 70 million more men in China than women because so many females that were born were euthanized so that they could only have one child, so they'd have a male child. I mean, just that kind of thinking, that programming, it's just so devastating to a young woman. I understand. I can't identify with that, but.
Yes, actually, for Anita, it was gender, and it was also faith. She was Hindu, and yet she went to a Christian community, and in that community, she had learned that she wasn't doing it in the right way. You know, you need to do it this way, not that way. Yeah. And so it was another layer of concern and anxiety and guilt and uncertainty.
Yeah, she had sleepless nights. She was afraid to die in her sleep and go to hell. You know, that confusion of what this, little 6-year-old tells her on the playground, unless, you're going to hell unless, boom, 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 boom. And what's wrong with us? And she goes to her parents and what's wrong? But just this little soul is so hurt and broken up that this religious exclusivity, religiocentric belief systems, Unity, we're more pluralistic. We honor all pathways to God. We see truth everywhere. And we're just happy that folks are on a path, a spiritual path, because as they transform, they're changing the world just by bringing their love and their peace from the ashes of the ego to divinity expressing. Amen?
Another way in which Anita struggled was with her culture, both within her family and within the greater culture in which she lived. In their community, it's normal that they arrange marriages and that the woman is subservient to the husband. And she was afraid that her own dreams of traveling, of seeing, of learning, of doing were going to be thwarted to try and fit in to the society expectations, to her parents' belief of what would make her happy.
Yeah, and then, her mom or her family wanted her to be married, and so they started doing her matchmaking services and arranging people to come in and marry, and this looked really good, so she puts on her prettiest, traditional Indian outfit, and she goes out to dinner. And to understand, her nanny was Chinese. She was raised in Hong Kong, and her peer group were mostly lily-white British kids. And so she was different. So she goes out to dinner with this very, very traditional Hindu family. And I don't know if you know much about Hinduism, but vegetarian is the way it is if you're devout. So she orders a tuna fish sandwich. And that was the end of that engagement, or possible engagement.
Straight faces. When you've done something in society you don't quite fit in. Yeah. So how do these things play in our world, in our lives? We want to look at that religious exclusivity. It's got to be done this way, and it's got to be that way, and this is the right way, and that's the wrong way. And there are so many things that have happened in the world from people who have felt that they knew the right way and every other way was the wrong way. So which is the right way? How do we sort all of this out? I want to share with you that Unity is a faith tradition that is elastic to our comprehension of truth. And we support the internal discernment of truth. And it's not dogmatic. Our faith is open, and matter of fact, Charles Fillmore would say, up into his 90s, I reserve the right to change my mind. And he was open at the top. He would take things to headquarters when he was in meditation. And when people would ask him questions in class when he was teaching, he would say, what do you think about that? Pulling forth the wisdom innate within us. Matter of fact, our whole youth program is designed by the learning curriculum of pulling forth the truth, the life, the wisdom that is within our youth, not trying to pour something into them that's not already there.
Yeah. The angst, when I was very young, I was kind of a playground bully. And has anybody been bullied? I had a very wise playground teacher that harnessed my energy to become a deputy and to protect. And I had a purpose, and it worked. But and I was much larger when I just stopped growing in junior high. So I became a lover instead of a fighter. But anyhow. But it's important to understand that if those have been bullied, and we don't know how sometimes we say something and it accidentally hurts somebody. You know, we can unwittingly really injure people around us by just being unconscious. Sometimes, trying to be funny. And people, because, I like to banter with Kristen. She doesn't like it.
Oh, that's not true. That's so not true. It's just sometimes when there's a soft spot. It's like,
yeah, and see, I grew up with two older brothers that were all hockey players, and I don't know if you saw Slapshot, but it's like the Hanson brothers. We were a little physical. When my sister wanted to talk to us, she would just go up and hold her hands up so that we could punch her fist. So she got it, so I've got to dial it back considerably. But the unconscious way that we can just make a remark and inadvertently really hurt somebody that's really important to us. And again, it just buries that vulnerability. We don't want to be vulnerable when we're getting hurt.
And most bullying comes from vulnerability, someone who doesn't feel good enough. And so they're projecting that out on someone else. So if that ever happened to you, know that the origin of that energy was probably from their own disease, their own disconnection with their own essence. And so we can become more free. Our gender or our race can often be times in which we experience comments that cover us up, that don't see us for ourselves, for who we really are in the world. And the truth be told, we really are almost completely alike. There are these small, minor nuances that we look at and judge, and then doubt and fear play their part and cause a sense of separation, when really there is only a sense of connection.
Mm-hmm. I heard something from Dr. Hawkins one time. He was a researcher and a psychiatrist for 50 years, ran the largest psychiatric clinic in the United States, had 26 locations throughout New York back in the day. And he discovered that approximately 8% of all mammals are homosexual. It's biologic. It's not choice, it's what you are. And, about 8%. Did you know that about 2% of our population have red hair? So we don't pick on the redheads, do we?
No.
Well, maybe sometimes. Well, we don't want to do that. But we honor everybody. We are what we are. Take it or leave it.
And better yet, celebrate it.
Yeah.
Celebrate it. Every race on this planet has a gift to give the gift to humanity. Can we be present to it? Can we love it? Yeah. Celebrate that red hair. Enjoy it. It's glorious and it's beautiful. And our gender, sometimes our gender we can feel not good enough if we are a certain gender. And Malala, who was a young Pakistani girl at the age of 11, started speaking out about young women, girls' rights to get an education. And she was shot by the Taliban in the face for this crime, quote. And she is an advocate to this day. She healed, she's better, she got a Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, and she's now an advocate for all children everywhere, for education, for equality, and for peace. The beauty of her soul shining forth through the situation, the circumstances of her life.
If we try to stuff our truth, it's not healthy. I went through a season in my life where I had a calling on my life and I was supposed to get involved in ministry. And life circumstances wouldn't allow that to happen. I kept giving up my truth to satisfy my former wife. I cared very dearly for her. But there was, we had grown and went on different paths. And she was quite resistant to my getting involved in ministry, even though we had talked about this calling that was there since I was a 22-year-old, that it would happen someday. But when it came to it, it was like, no. And we both realized, but wait a minute, we're living something that's not our life. And it was very difficult, very hard, and eventually we did split after 20 years. And it was the excruciating experience. I went into depression for a few years. And then out of that, there was hope. I died to my calling, because in the traditional church, if you've had divorce, you can't be a pastor, And so I started finding grace in unity and people encouraging me. You know how many people have had divorces these days? It's okay. It's okay. And so out of that depression, and the Spirit kept wakening it up in me after I had died to this calling. And so, but if we give up our truth for somebody else's truth, we're throwing a cage over an eagle. And we want to see an eagle fly, right? We don't want to see an eagle in a cage. In your heart, if you've been giving up your truth for a peer group or for whatever, stand for your truth. There's some tension when you stand up against a river current, but when you make a stand, you feel integrous. Amen?
Trying to fit into a smaller box, whether it's peer or our culture or our family, restricts us into this little tiny sphere that only can be sustained for a certain length of time. Anita mentioned in her book that she was acting it all out. She was acting the part of what her culture expected her to do, but at the same time, she knew that she couldn't live up to it long term, because in essence, it's a facade. Yeah. It's a facade that has to come down. And when it does come down, we remove this essence of what has covered it, and what we discover is our true self. So how can we reclaim who we really are and crawl out of those past experiences of boxes, or of experiences of feeling small and not good enough? Anita Moorjani said that she had to take some time and sort herself out, to take some time and to stand on her own, to travel after she almost went through with that marriage that wasn't going to be in alignment with who she truly was. Mm-hmm. And how do we love? How do we sort this out?
I encourage everybody to practice peace, because if we want to eradicate all fear from our life, it's this hope. Any little particle of fear creates a big umbrella against the sun, and we're not experiencing the sun. So fear puts us in a dark place that we've held on to, and we don't know it because it's unconscious, because the ego is trying to save you from getting hurt, remember? So we dive into that. I just encourage everybody to find your peace, practice peace. The one thing the ego dreads is silence. I think it's imperative that we practice silence. Be in the company of good friends that are going in a direction you want to go. Have a strong devotional practice where you read good books. Contemplation, meditation, it's critical. It's really imperative. We recycle. We restore.
We
do recycle. But we restore in nature. So taking walks periodically just really grounds us, and the stress just goes away. But it's part of practicing peace. Follow your bliss, remember?
And self-acceptance. What is in you was put there by the divine, and it is good. You are created in the image and likeness of this one presence and one power that is God the good. And it is in you. And you can trust it. And it is good enough. Not only is it good enough, Frank Phelan said that it's magnificent. And that's what Lance Lean told me this morning. And we think sometimes that we're not sufficient, but Lance said this morning, he said, we are sufficient. Significant. And we are capable. We are created to be who we are. Doesn't that feel good? We are created to be fully in this world as we are, and to trust that and to allow that. So we'd like to take this into an internal experience, much like Anita felt when she went beyond the veil.
Jesus said to love your enemies as yourself, or love your enemies. How can we do that if we don't love ourselves? Yeah. So this is a story about unconditional love for the self. It begins here. If we can love ourselves and tame that inner critic to be a nurturing, uplifting voice. And that is what we're inviting you into this morning. So we'd invite you to close your eyes.
And if you feel so moved, put your feet flat on the ground. Put one hand on your heart and one hand on your solar plexus to bear witness to your very being, to the beauty of your being. Feel being bathed in an aura of pure, blissful love. And realize how much this feeling has the unlimited potential to heal you.
Feel the true meaning of Jesus' words that with God all things are possible. We leave nothing out. We see healing the past. All harmful words that were ever spoken, we release. All painful experiences, we forgive. Can you imagine all fear gone? That you can't even find any fear anymore in your hearts?
Where has the fear gone? Wow, I can't even feel it anymore. Imagine recognizing that as soon as we get emotionally attached to a situation or a drama taking place around us, that we find ourselves being pulled back into our peaceful essence. We can see that there is a bigger picture, a grander plan that is unfolding. And we can begin to feel our attachments receding as we begin to realize that everything is in perfect order and going according to a greater plan, a greater tapestry of the universe.
And can we understand that even if our physical bodies ceased, everything is still perfect in the greater tapestry of life? For we can never truly die. Like many people that have had near-death experiences, there is no attachment to the body. There's absolutely no fear of death. The physical body is far too small to adequately house our true essence, which is free, liberated, and magnificent. Imagine every pain, ache, sadness, and sorrow now completely gone. This is our pure state.
Feel a sense of being encompassed by pure, unconditional love. And even these words don't do it justice. It is the deepest kind of caring. It is the deepest that we have ever experienced. It is beyond any physical form of affection that we can imagine. And it is unconditional. And it is ours. Regardless of what we have ever done, we don't have to do anything or behave in a certain way to earn this love. This love is for all of us, no matter what. Feel completely bathed and renewed in this energy and feel as though we belong. As though we finally arrive after all of those years of struggle and pain and anxiety and fear. We have finally come home.
Allow a wave of peace to overtake you and displace any anxiousness, any fear, any stress. Feel a new lease on life, and above all else, love yourselves. Treasure your magnificence, and banish all disease-producing thoughts from your daily life. And now, I invite you to open your eyes.
And remain in this space of this field of love. Even as you bring your attention back to this room, what would it be like to live from this place always? The beauty of the essence of your being is pure, and we discover it. And when we discover it within ourselves, we can see it in one another. Namaste.
Thank you for joining us today. If you like the message, we invite you to like it or share it. And we also want to let you know that we're on Instagram, Twitter, and we'll see you again next Sunday on Facebook at 11:25.
We're a New Thought church where lives are transformed, and we welcome you to check us out. Check out our website, unityhills.org. We'll see you next week.
Namaste.